Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to call this meeting to order of the Education Subcommittee of the Ways and Means of the House Ways and Means Committee. We'll get started with our agenda as the advocates are coming in. We're going to start with House Bill 418. This bill we haven't discussed yet, but we will have a discussion today, and hopefully we'll be able to, figure out we'll be able to come to some decision today on this bill. Alistair, can you tell us what this bill does? And we have a potential amendment for this bill too.
Yes, absolutely. So as this bill was introduced, it prohibits it requires county boards to adopt a policy prohibiting the use or display of a symbol of hate on school grounds. The policy is not allowed to prohibit the use of those symbols of hate in classrooms for study at the school, and each county board is required to develop and distribute educational materials detailing the policy adopted under this section. Symbol of hate is defined as a means, symbol, image, or object that expresses animus towards another individual on the basis of that individual's race, color, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, or national origin. And symbols of hate include a new swastika and Confederate flag. There is an amendment that would state that the definition includes, in addition to being an object that expresses animus, that it be one that is reasonably forecast to lead to a disruption in school, which was a holding made by the Fourth Circuit in analyzing a similar law under which they upheld a similar prohibition. So that amendment would alter the definition to try to protect this a little bit from challenges of unconstitutionality.
Okay, I'll ask Delegate Guyton if you can want to add anything as a sponsor of the bill, and then we'll take some questions.
Right. No, thank you very much. Thanks for the work on that amendment. I think that that's exactly what the bill needed to just make sure that it was constitutionally sound. And, I think it's a very important bill that, particularly in this time and this place, that we move forward and say that it's no longer okay to have these symbols that keep our educational environment from feeling safe for everyone. So I hope you'll support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate Guyton. Delegate, let me just ask you a quick question. Would a symbol, you mentioned a couple of things on here of symbol of hate in the bill, could include a new swastika or a Confederate flag in the bill. Would wearing a t-shirt that says Black Lives Matter fall under this?
No, it would not, because the hate is specifically defined as something that has to show animus towards another group based on race. And so if you're supporting something like a Black Lives Matter t-shirt or a rainbow flag t-shirt, if it's for LGBTQ community, then no, that would not fall under these prohibitions.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, Delegate Holmberger. Delegate Rose with the first question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think Alistair covered this, but I just want to confirm. So like religious symbols such as like a cross or a Jewish star, a dreidel, things like that would be fine because they're not symbols of hate, correct? That's
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Rose. Delegate Holmberger.
Yeah, I just couple questions and concerns here. Let's say that I violate this. What am I looking at as a student?
Would you like me to answer that, Mr. Chair?
Let's see if Alistair can answer it first.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's entirely addressed in the bill, but it would be up to whatever policy the county board adopts. Probably you would potentially be looking at, I mean, depending on what's going on, say if you wear a shirt with a swastika to school, they would probably ask that you remove it, I think that that's probably the extent of.
Yeah, where well, I think Ebersol wanted to chime.
Just real quick, Delegate Ebersol, can you answer that?
Just in a school, if there is some, they don't have policies, but sometimes administrators, alcohol advertisements on shirts, they keep a supply of t-shirts for them to put over top. They don't make them disrobe, but they usually give them something to put over top of it.
Yeah, I just have some concerns that one, we would be penalizing a person more so than if we did this outside of the school. That would be my first concern.
Delegate Holmberg, you were breaking up. I didn't hear what you were saying.
Yeah, so my first concern is that this allows the potentiality to punish a student more so than they would be if they did the same act outside of the school. That's the way the bill's written. The second thing is, we talk a lot about restorative practices in this committee, and I'd like to see it more as a, hey, we shouldn't do that. This is an alternative. This is how we remedy it, as opposed to like a hard, fast penalty. And then the last concern is the language is ambiguous about what, it does give examples. Obviously, the obvious ones are nooses, swastikas, things of that nature. But I think the anecdote that the bill sponsor brought forward was that there was a student who had a rebel flag sticker on the truck, and then the students went and complained about it, and there was no policy. I would go, one step further. When I was a student, I had a sticker on my truck that was the fish with Darwin written in, and it had feet on the fish. Some of you are familiar with this, whatever. That the way the bill is written, that could be construed as something that goes against another religion. So
Yeah. I think that's a good point, Delegate. There does have to, however, be a reasonable forecast that that symbol would cause disruption, which is a standard that is an intermediate scrutiny standard, which would require the court to have evidence that things like that had happened in the past. So that, for instance, if you had a Darwin sticker on your car, they would have to show that that had led in the past to the sorts of disruption that this bill is trying to prevent. And that finding would have to be made for any of these symbols.
Okay.
Yeah, and Delegate Guyton, do you want to hop in here with to answer his first question?
Sure. Actually, the reason that these symbols were selected is, first of all, they're consistent with other parts of Maryland state law, hate crime law, but also these are all symbols that have been either upheld, well, they've all been upheld legally in legal challenges throughout the country, but also the majority of our counties already ban one or more of these. Not all of them.
I'm not arguing against those.
Yeah.
I'm arguing against the potentiality to the way the bill's written, lump in anything.
Sure. Well, this is why we're asking a policy, the county boards to develop the policy. There would be input from constituents. There would probably be, a lot of meetings on this. So, and you would have to prove the animus piece in that. And I don't see that your example would do that, but, certainly if, I don't think it would hold up in court like the rest of these would. So, and then the last,
Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Delegate Holmberg, I think she's going to answer your other question. So let's the last part of the question.
Yeah. Just as far as the difference in expected behavior between outside of the school setting and inside of the school setting is you do not have the same freedom of right of speech inside the school building as you do outside the school building. And that's just been established by federal law over and over again. And this really is put into the code of conduct along with other dress code violations. So there's no penalty or no jail sentence associated with this. You just would have to change your shirt.
Yeah, and I wasn't arguing whether or not you could do that at school. It's a penalty versus on school versus off school. Okay.
Yeah,
and then
go ahead, Delegate Holmberg.
Yeah, there could be a situation, a very conservative county, something that offends a religion or whatever, but can go both ways. So I guess my recommendation would be maybe you prescribe the terms or the images that are already in state law. But as the bill is written, it allows anybody to come up with anything. So that's just a concern. Just, trying to make the bill better. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point about it being broad and making it a little bit more, some other symbols of hate that are consistent with state law. Delegate Guyton or Alistair, do you have any other examples or clear examples where we could potentially add?
I mean, I'd be fine with an amendment to do just those three, because those three are very solidly, in state law. I think that the idea behind it is that unfortunately hate symbols evolve, right?
Right.
And that if something else were to pop up in its place, that would be covered, and that the county boards would then have the ability to go back and add those. But that's it. I would be fine if the committee decided to move in that more restrictive manner.
Got it. Okay, let's go to Delegate Polakovich-Carr and then Delegate Brazil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand the concerns, I guess, about trying to be more specific, but I think it's hard to come up with a comprehensive list. And I think if by narrowing it, we're actually just ensuring that in the future we have to keep coming back to keep adding things. I'm actually more comfortable with where it is as is. I mean, it's just requiring a policy. It's not particular disciplinary outcomes or anything like that. It's just saying that the school has to come up with a policy.
Correct. Delegate Holmberg, what do you think about that response?
Yeah, we don't have to, we can't future-proof the bill. It sounds like there's no punitive action that's associated with displaying these. Is that, okay. And then secondly, other examples would be the purple spaghetti monster, which is now an ordained religion, basically came up with to thumb its nose at other organized religion. I mean, there's a multitude of these things. There was also recently the OK symbol, which I believe is like this, and somehow that's associated with a white supremacy movement. But kids inadvertently do it to each other. I don't want to get kids in trouble. I want kids to not do that stuff anymore. So any way we can do that, I'm cool with it.
Got it. Okay. Delegate Ebersol.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I got distracted for just a second, and we may have hit this, but I want to do 1 and 2 go together, and are those the only 3 that we are citing, or is that includes these but not limited to? Is that the way? Which way are we looking at it?
That's the way it says right now. These 3, but not limited to.
Does it say that?
The amendment says that.
Okay, thank you. All right. So there could be others. I mean, we do get into a gray area here. I mean, like kids can wear campaign shirts, but suddenly a Trump shirt might be seen as something that incites people to some sort of violence. I mean, it's going to be a difficult one to tamp down for counties. But Delegate Hornberger, I agree that we can't be proofed, but I don't think counties will come up. They can come up with policies, but generally the policy now is to just take the symbol out of sight somehow or another in that case. Right. But yeah, you do see, I feel a gray area coming up there. Right. So it worries me a little bit that if we don't have just those 3, that there'll be others.
If we don't, let's say that hold on 1 second. Say that one more time, Billy.
If we say it's these 3, but not limited to them, then something like I've described, after January 6th, running around with the Trump flag could be seen as inciting some sort of violence, whereas before it would have been seen as supporting a certain candidate. So it's going to be a little bit tricky there, I think. But
Delegate Guyton.
Yeah, thank you. And I should have said
I'm sorry, Delegate Guyton. Hold on 1 second.
Sure.
Alistair, go ahead.
So the reasonable forecasting language should perhaps limit that, Delegate. There needs to be a history of incidents occurring that surrounding these sorts of symbols that would lead to their prohibition. And I don't know that, that there could in the future be incidents surrounding a particular candidate's shirt or something like that, but I don't think they exist now. So in developing this policy, the county would have to do that. And I just wanted to get a point of clarification from the committee. Did you want to include the thing Delegate Hornberger suggested about making sure that when adopting one of these policies, schools turn first to restorative practices rather than more harsh disciplines when a student violates?
So that's one to discuss. We are leaving it up to the local school systems to decide. But for what I understand, that if there's a clothing issue, it's not generally punitive. It's generally changing their clothes or sending to the detention. I mean, I know that people wear uniforms, and sometimes uniforms are wrong, and so they're given clothes or they're sent. So I'm not sure if we need that necessarily, but it could be a friendly attachment to the bill, right? So I'm not concerned about that, but I do want to stick with where we want to go with the bill, right? First, if we want to make it includes, or if we want to make it strictly this language. So I think that's what we have in front of us. Delegate Smith, did you have anything else to say to that? I'm sorry, or were you good?
For me.
Cool.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I was only going to say that currently, first of all, to Delegate Eversole's point, most of us on this call, most of our counties already do this, or at least do a piece of it and already have these pieces in place for how to discipline, or not discipline, but deal with dress code. So none of this is new to the counties. It's just what's included in that policy that changes with this bill. If they wanted to outlaw the spaghetti monster right now in Cecil County, they actually could do that. This bill would make it more difficult, because they would have to show that it actually would have a history of disruption.
Similarly to the Trump comment too. Okay, Delegate Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So there are just 3 points I wanted to react to based on what we have before us. One, I want to thank you, Delegate Guyton, for bringing forth this bill. The way that it's crafted with the amendment, I do feel really strongly that you don't want to base it on just these 3, things, because law has to be flexible enough to anticipate, emerging trends. And I quite frankly, as a parent, I kind of really look at a school board. I need you to be on the front lines of change, because children are at the front lines of change in terms of how we communicate, technology, what have you. Notions, for example, of bullying are stuck in the 80s, and now people are doing cyber. You got to keep up with the times, right? So I think we have a responsibility to keep up with how people express hate, receive hate, and what those symbols mean. And I think the fact that it still has to be grounded to some pattern of being associated with harm is also a qualifier, so that it's not as random. Or I could see how someone could be concerned that could something that seems innocuous be construed as hateful because of a vendetta or something like that, right? I think it has to still be tied to something else, makes it, to me, not that much of a free-for-all. But I do want to just lift up that we are in a school environment. So I'm sensitive to what Delegate Hornberger has mentioned around, are we missing an opportunity to be educational about what things represent? Because, you could be wholly ignorant of how a symbol affects another person. And I think a school is a really good place to, make sure people are aware of things that maybe, quite frankly, they might not be aware of. We can't assume, that people know certain things. That's the only thing I wanted to say. I don't know if the restorative practices framework is exactly it, or is this an opportunity just to educate, Just wanted to offer that up.
No, I think your last point is well taken about, ensuring that we're educating our students on symbols of hate and what the history of those mean, and adding some language in here that could help not make this punitive, but educational or informative interaction. So I appreciate that. Delegate Rose, thank you for being patient.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to circle back, I would agree with the comments that Delegate Hornberger and Delegate Smith just brought up as far as, strengthening this with that amendment. But circling back, and this, I guess, maybe is an Alistair question. So when it was brought up about political candidates and things of that nature, I understand that each local school board makes their own decisions, but I would be very concerned moving forward. Number one, when you talk about educational opportunities, we constantly talk about, we want young people engaged in, learning about the political process, candidates, and things of that nature. And so I would be comfortable if maybe in Delegate Hornberger's amendment, or if it's already covered, I wouldn't want, just because we don't like a certain candidate for whatever reasons, that, that kid then gets, well, you have to turn your shirt inside out. I think that kids should have the same opportunity to express their feelings in the political arena equally. So that's just would be my only comment and concern.
Yeah, Delegate, but this doesn't touch on the candidates. It has to have a history of, provoking some type of incitement or disruption, a history of that, right?
I definitely understand that, but I've heard a lot of comments and rhetoric that, I'm not making a judgment about it, but we keep being told, well, everybody was triggered by Trump on January 6th and January 6th and January 6th. And so, I don't want to get to the point where a political candidate, because you agree with them, suddenly becomes in this arena a symbol of hate because you don't like him or some things that he said or the way that he behaved. And I'm mostly thinking about moving forward. As we move forward into future elections, it just gives me pause. So that's why I bring it up, because of some of that. That's my concern.
Got it. Okay. Delegate Ebersol, you walked away. I guess your question has been answered.
Okay.
All right. So what I'm hearing is,
when the senator calls and wishes you condolences because your father's died, you take his call, okay? I'm not talking about a senator across the street, so I thought I would grab that one real quick. People are being very nice to me today. I'm sorry, I do know what I wanted to say. Relevant, and I think Delegate Smith would agree with me that the way for us to educate students on things like she's talking about is not in a haphazard or an uncontrolled way. That to talk about, we talk about this when we talk about statues and all that sort of thing too, not to go down that rabbit hole with some of the people on the other that don't serve in the same party as I do. But we talk about not celebrating those things or not doing them randomly, talk about them in a controlled situation. Dealing with those symbols of hate in a social studies classroom or another classroom is the place to do it, where the conversation is managed, not necessarily controlled, but managed. And so I think this bill still applies there. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit because I was
guys,
cautious.
I just want to remind folks that if you are texting or if you are sending messages through the chat, it is subject to MPIA. So just keep that in mind. It's not. But I do want to. Any ideas on maybe from the list of advocates that we have here in how to craft language that will make it less punitive and more of a, I think we all agree on the point that we don't make it, we don't want to make the initial or second time of wearing the symbol be punitive, but a learning opportunity. Any potential language that we can add. Alice, do you have any ideas on what we can do here? Or maybe any of the advocates, if you can raise your hand and maybe chime in here. Okay. Miss Ortiz.
Good afternoon, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Counsel for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. So I think Delegate Ebersol has and Delegate Guyton have spoken to this, but all school systems have a student code of conduct, and we have different steps for like first offense, second offense, third offense. And so obviously if it's like a crime of violence or something of that nature would be dealt with on the first offense differently than a dress code violation. And I can speak for Anne Arundel, and I'm sure most of the other school systems, probably all of them, you have the opportunity, you have to go change your clothes, right? Now, if you're refusing and being defiant or causing a scene, right, that's a whole other issue. So I think some language to the effect of, to provide the student the opportunity to change the clothing or remove the symbol from the backpack, I think is referenced, or remove the symbol would go to that. And those are things that we're already doing as school systems. And certainly the goal is not to discipline a student, to Delegate Smith's point, that just may not have been aware, right, that was offensive in any nature. So something to the effect of, allowing the student to change their clothing or remove the symbol, I think would be helpful, because we're already doing that, right? We don't want to penalize students for these types of things. And then obviously if it becomes a reoccurring issue, that's where our code of conduct comes in, and there are different steps, and kids are given opportunities. A dress code infraction is not treated for the most part in the same way as some other bigger infraction. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that, Mr. Ortiz, if you can stay, I think to Delegate Hornberger's point is that we don't want school systems to take it to a high level, right, of making it, so egregious that they want to suspend the student, right? Like, and how do we protect against that?
No, absolutely. And so I think, that language about allowing them to change and, having an opportunity to rectify the situation is, very appropriate and would make it clear in the event that you have a school system that wants to take, a harsher approach. I think that that is a very appropriate sort of language to address that and to make it clear that,
Got it. Okay.
it's super punitive.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Alistair, you have anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very good. I think we don't want to be overly prescriptive here, but I think there's a happy ground for saying something just like Ms. Ortiz suggested.
Cool. So let's so something to the extent of what Ms. Ortiz said will be great as an additional amendment. And then the discussion here leaves us to, do we want to keep it to being not limited to? List, but not limited to. And what I'm getting is the group here, majority of the group here would like to keep it to not limited to. Can I get some shaking heads on that? Is that right? Thanks. Okay, cool. All right, sounds good.
You're like a
okay.
bobblehead, man.
All right, great. Okay, so is everyone okay with Alistair coming up with the First Amendment and writing it for us later? And then, so can we move that amendment first? Delegate Guyton.
Move favorable on the amendment.
Okay. It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Okay. On the amendment that we have in front of us, which keeps it to it being not limited to, do I hear a motion on that amendment?
Come on there, sponsor, do it. Second.
Come on, Delegate Guyton.
Come on, sponsor.
All right, do I hear it? It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. On the bill as amended, Delegate Guyton.
Move favorable.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Wow, look at that. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, House Bill 854. First, let me just thank you all for the discussion. That was fantastic. So thanks for that. Let's go to House Bill 854, which is the chair's bill on Mark Fisher's MLDS.
Yes. So as this bill was introduced, it includes in what MLDS is required to study out-of-home placement data, and requires that in MLDS's functioning, they begin to look at that data and look at how student placement and out-of-home placements leads to different effects in education and the workforce. The chair does have an amendment. Unfortunately, it is an amendment in concept at the current time. It does not really change the broad nature of the bill, but changes several of the specifics. So rather than just looking at out-of-home placement data, it would also include assignment to child protective services data and family intervention data. Additionally, rather than changing MLDS's broader mission to include that data, it just includes child welfare data as part of educational data and would require that the center research that data. Additionally, the bill as introduced repealed a requirement that MLDS publish a report annually with the Department of Legislative, with the General Assembly, but go into the library of the Department of Legislative Services and replace it with a data dashboard on the center's website. The amendment would say that in addition to publishing that dashboard on the center's website, the center would annually send the data information to the General Assembly to be stored for any future legislators. And so basically the framework of the bill is maintained, albeit with these slight changes. Any questions on that? Does that all make sense?
Sorry, you're asking my questions, Alistair.
Sorry.
All right, any questions? There's no amendment to this bill, right?
There is an amendment. It's unfortunately an amendment in concept at the current time. But
Okay, can you describe the amendment? Because I was actually looking through my papers trying to find.
Oh yeah, I was just going through it. It basically, it keeps the bill on the same focus broadly, but just changes specifics. So rather than collecting out-of-home placement data, the center would collect out-of-home placement data plus child welfare service data plus family intervention data. Additionally, that data would not be categorized as its own thing that runs throughout the mission of the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center, but rather a part of student data that they would collect and report on like they do other student data. And then finally, the bill repeals this report that the center must send to the General Assembly, and the amendment would require that they still send data dashboard samples from particular dates to the General Assembly.
Hey, Alistair, how long will it take to get that amendment from you?
It should.
It does sound like a substantive amendment, though. It doesn't sound simple.
We'll all just sit here for a minute and you can go do it. And then you come.
It is substantive in the particulars that is being captured, but the intent of what the bill is doing is still the same, if that makes sense.
So
I will have the amendment before our voting session tonight at 4. But I certainly will have it tomorrow if you'd prefer to discuss this tomorrow.
Does everybody feel comfortable with moving that amendment, or do you want to?
I'll move the amendment in concept and see if there's interest. How's that?
Okay, sure. Delegate Guyton is seconding it, I think.
Second.
That's it.
Okay.
That's a symbol for second.
All those in favor. It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor of the conceptual amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. On the bill as amended, Delegate Ebersol.
Move favorable.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Great, thank you. Okay, let's move on to our last bill that we have in front of us, a local county bill that has a lot of amendments. Alistair, you want to tell us what this bill does?
Yeah, so as this bill came in, it altered the membership of the Charles County Commissioners Charles County Board of Education. It created 6 member districts and specified the qualifications for those seats. Provided some information on when an elected member would have to forfeit office, and additionally made a student member a voting member of the board. The amendments, I think, limit that to 4 districts, and they limit what the student member is authorized to vote on. Rather than voting on all matters, the student member cannot vote on matters related to appeals of special education placements, hearings held under sections 4205 and 7305 of the education article, which I think relate to student discipline and teacher personnel issues. Sorry, that's covered below. They may now vote on appointment, salary, and evaluation of the county superintendent, collective bargaining decisions, capital and operating budgets, or school closings, openings, or the school district boundaries. And then it specifies that on a majority vote of elected members, the county board may determine on a case-by-case basis whether a matter under consideration is covered by the exclusionary provisions pertaining to a student member. So they're fairly extensive changes. This is a local bill, and we received a favorable delegation letter on it.
Was that vote unanimous? You know, Alistair?
I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to.
Don't worry about it. Don't
Okay.
worry about it. Delegate Holmberg with the first question.
Yeah, I just, I'm trying to understand here. So we passed HB 655 out of the House and it prescribed election schemes for all school board members, and this bill doesn't seem to do that.
I think that they are covered on that, under that bill, but I'd have to defer to Stan for more specifics on that. I apologize for not knowing that
Okay.
off the top of my head.
Yeah, I just,
Delegate Holmberg, your question is that it doesn't,
it conflicts with HB 655 as amended.
so it's, you're saying that it's district voting, but it's voted countywide?
Yeah, so the way that the 655 came out of the House said that it's all councilmatic. This bill doesn't do that.
Where are you seeing that in here, Delegate? We can hold it until we resolve that issue unless Alistair, you can figure that out. If it does that,
He's muted.
you're muted.
Sorry about that. I think that that was in the original bill and that it was struck out perhaps to make this parallel to how that bill came out, but I will make sure to double check and if you like to take this up later.
Yep, that's fine.
Got it. Okay. Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do see in the testimony that the Charles County Education Unit had concerns, and I haven't been able to read through them quickly enough. I just am curious. Since we're waiting, I'm gonna see if their concerns were addressed as well. I was gonna ask what they were, but it looks like we're gonna give this a little time, so I'm gonna check with them.
Sure. Okay.
I was trying to get my hand down, but I didn't in time, so I decided to talk instead.
Cool. 2 questions so far. So great. Okay. Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And actually, along the lines of Delegate Ebersol's questions, actually, I saw that less than an hour ago, we got emails, 2 separate emails, one from the Charles County Commissioners and one from the Charles County Board of Education. And it looks like that second one has some proposed amendments. So I just was going to see if Alistair has seen that yet and if their suggestions are incorporated into what the amendments are before us.
Yeah, we can hold off and see if they are, and see if they align with what the intent of the bill is trying to do here. I would like to make sure that the first point is making sure that we don't have any, we get HB 655 out of this bill if it is in the bill. So we'll resolve all those issues. And but we did get a letter of support from the Charles County Commissioners in support of the bill as is. And I think it was voted unanimously out of the House, out of Charles County too. Okay, was there any other discussion on this bill? This seems like it was a hotly contested bill in Charles County. I don't see anybody from Charles County on here. So I'm just gonna let this live. Okay, we'll answer those questions next time and then we'll come up with, see where we can go with this bill next. So thank you, everyone. That concludes our voting session on these bills, and we'll be meeting again tomorrow to take up several other pieces of legislation. So.